Bullshit.
It's the No BS Marketing Show. I'm your host, Dave Mastovich. Our guest today is Shep Hyken. He is a Hall of Fame speaker, author of 5 books. He was fantastic in episode, might even be more than 5 if I messed up, correct me, Shep, but he was fantastic in the first episode. One of his books, The Amazement Revolution, was a bestseller, and he's also been in the National Speakers Association president, and again, he achieved that CPAE status, which is the National Speakers Association's Hall of Fame designation for lifetime achievement, which, believe me, as a speaker, that is a heck of an achievement. He's been on Fox News and other media outlets, interviewed on all kinds of stuff about customer service. I want to make sure he's able to tell us all about how he went through and built each of those books and built his business. Shep, welcome to the No BS Marketing Show, episode 2.
Thanks. Great to be back.
So just a quick recap of episode 1, you had talked about as a 12-year-old, you had your first paid performance as a magician, and your parents gave you this tremendous feedback, and they said, send a thank you note, which you did, and you love that. Then they said, follow up a week later with a phone call, ask them what they liked the most, ask them if there was anyone else they could refer you to, and you began implementing that awesome advice throughout your career, and it has paid tremendous dues. You prepared for every speech, and you gave some great advice saying, look, as simple of a thing as getting to bed early before the night before a speech is what real preparation involves. You then talked about how you went after college. Yeah, you always use positive phrases, which I like. You said, I was in the oil business. You were pumping gas, but you turned that into a management job, and then that company got sold, and you began to say, I want to live my dream as a motivational speaker. And you had a book, How to Master the Art of Selling by Hopkins, and you also then listened to Zig Ziglar, and that got you the goal setting. You created a 10-year plan at age 23, and you hit it in year 9. So you created one from 31 to 40. Awesome goal setting stuff. Then in your early 40s, you started to have a goal of doing 45 to 50 speeches a year. You had the great quote. You said that the job isn't doing the speech, it's getting the speech. And you talked about all of that stuff, and you gave us your vulnerability about your weakness, where sometimes you can be too hard on people after you've given them a number of chances. So now when we get into episode 2, I want to hear about the books, what inspired you to write the first one, how hard of a process was, because I know my first book was a bit of a challenge and to fight through it. I had a second smaller one, and now I'm thinking of doing a third one. I want to hear how you did that, because you've done so many, and yours have hit bestseller status, just awesome stuff. So here on episode 2, talking about the books, the first book, and how you got inspired to do it.
Sure. First book was called Moments of Magic, and rewrote it just a few years ago to bring it up to date. Imagine that I would say if you want to get something to somebody quickly, fax it to them. And there's something new coming out. It's called email. My email address, it was like a 9-digit number at CompuServe.com. So it was time to update the book after a number of years. But no, that book came in it wasn't hard to write. So first of all, why did I write it? I was told when I got into the speaking business in 1983, and I wrote the book in 1989. It came out in 90. But basically, that was the best business card that I could create. It wasn't as easy to get a book published back then. So I did self-publish it, made it a softbound book. Great book. Gosh, I can't imagine how many I've sold now. Probably several 100,000 of these books over the years. Yeah,
amazing.
And most of them are now sold through Amazon. We'll have clients that buy in bulk here. But anyway, so that book was simple to write. I had a speech. I transcribed the speech. I recorded it, transcribed it. And then I said, wow, that's the nucleus of the book. Now, that was about 25 of the 160 some odd pages. So I just looked at all the different things I talked about, and I said, you know what, I'm going to embellish on these. I'm going to add 2 or 3 examples. And before I knew it, I had a nice little book. So that was how the first book was written. I needed to pay for the printing, and I actually sent manuscripts to about a dozen companies, and 2 or 3 of them stepped up and said, we'll pre-buy books for our employees. And I don't remember exactly how many books that was, but it basically paid for most of the printing. So that was a good thing. And at that point, I'm operating in a profit zone. I have a bunch of books that are now paid for, that I can now start selling. So that was the first book. Second book was called The Loyal Customer, Lesson from a Cab Driver. that is my signature story I tell in many of the speeches. As a matter of fact, if you go to my YouTube channel, which is easy to get to, sheptv.com, takes you straight to my YouTube channel. The story of the taxi cab driver is probably the best representation of what I do on stage. It talks a little bit about customer service, great energy, some humor, and that's what I am when I'm on stage. And I know, David, you mentioned that I was a motivational speaker, and I think every speaker needs to be motivating in style. I'm really a customer service and experience expert. Since after about that first or second speech, I realized my topic of customer service is what I was most passionate about, for all the reasons we talked about my parents teaching me good lessons, and it was just the right thing to do. I believe that. That's what I've been speaking on for almost 30 plus years anyway. And that's what all my books are about as well. So the cab driver story was simply a short, little, thin book. You could read it in 20 minutes, but there are 7 questions after I tell you the story that could take you a half a day with your team to work on to help take your service to the next level. The next book that came out.
Let me stop you for a second.
Sure.
Give us one of the 7 questions and maybe a brief answer. Put you on the spot.
I have to go back and look at them. But so I talk about the various touch points that the cab driver had, and the little extras, the amenities, if you will, because he included newspapers and gave me a soda and took me to see this fountain. I was right on the way to the airport. He says, "You got to see this fountain. It's beautiful." And we went and saw the fountain. So I ask you to think about what amenities you provide your customers. Maybe not in those exact words, but so it's like, what did we learn from the story? What are the moments of truth? Jan Carlson years ago wrote a book called Moments of Truth, and he talked about all the touch points, the times when a customer interacts with you. What are your touch points, and where can you enhance them? So questions like that. So
awesome.
The next book was the first true bestseller. It landed on the Wall Street Journal list. I believe it was number 5, and it hit the USA Today list, I believe, number 3. And it did not hit New York Times. I was very disappointed. It was number 1 in Amazon of all books sold for like a nanosecond. I have the screenshot to prove it, but it didn't stay up there very long. It did stay like number 1 in business books for weeks and weeks, but in all books sold was pretty cool. And my plan to do that, it was published through Wiley. This is probably about 10, 12 years ago. Great group of people to work with. And I remember them saying, we're going to print, I think, 7,500 for the first run, and your goal is to sell that out within a year. I said, well, I got news for you, man. I'm already selling the book. It isn't out yet. I'm pre-selling. My clients want it. I've been sending out a newsletter. I'm collecting orders. We are going to sell at least 10,000 books the first week that book goes on the market, because I have all these people that want the book. And sure enough, that's what happened. All those orders went in, and boom, we sold a ton of books that week. And so I told them, and they increased the 7,500 to 15,000. And I'll never forget, my acquisition editor that I worked with over there said to me, if you sell out 15,000 books, man, you're going to be able to write. You're going to get a huge advance on the next book, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, that's great. And of course, we're now in where it's on-demand printing, because they obviously sold out years and years ago. And then the next book came out, was called The Amazement Revolution. Now that one hit every list, including the New York Times. And then the most recent book, Amaze Every Customer Every Time. You can see there's a theme: amaze every customer, the amazement revolution. Cult of the Customer subtitle is, I probably should look to make sure, but create an amazing customer experience. There's that word amazing, that turns satisfied customers into customer evangelists, people that want to talk about you forever and ever and ever, I hope. So that's those have done really well. I've stuck with the theme of customer service. Just wrote a book that should be due out really soon called Be Amazing or Go Home. In other words, you come to work, you got a choice. You can be amazing or you cannot be. And if you're not going to be amazing in my organization, I want you to go home. And it all stemmed from somebody who kept coming in late every day to work. And I asked her, is this amazing behavior? And she said, no. I said, that's right. It's not amazing behavior. That's not what we do here. So you need to be amazing or go home. And she said, yeah, that's a great title for a book. And I said, we're going to write it. And I did. And then the book that'll come out next year is all about how convenient you can be to your customers. I think that's a big area right now. Customer service, generally being nice, table stakes. Creating a good process takes it to another level. But when you can be more convenient and create less friction for a customer, well, that's when I think you really take it to another level. That's when, service truly becomes marketing.
Did the employee who came up with, who said that'd be a great book title, Be Amazing or Go Home, did she change or go home?
She went home. And there's a very good reason why she did. She used to live 2 miles away. And then she moved to about 20 some odd miles away, and it was hard for her to get to work on time. I remember her saying, I keep leaving earlier and earlier every day. And I said, you're doing it wrong. You need to leave really, really early one day. And then next day, when you got here an hour early, maybe I'll leave 10 minutes later and let's see what happens, and that's how you do it. You don't back it up. That's a mindset. You think about it. That's like, this is what normal people do, is they just leave a little earlier. But amazing people would say, I don't want to be late. I'm going to leave really early, and then I'll know next time I don't need to leave that early. But we talked about it, and I said, we got 2 months before the end of the year. If you're still here at the end of the year, I'm going to give you a big raise. So at the end of the year, she was still here, and I offered her a big raise. And then I sat her down. I said, but I don't think you're happy. And she goes, I love my job. I just don't like the commute. I'm hour to hour and a half every day, each direction. And I said, I get it. What do you want to do? She says, I want to find a job closer to home. And I said, I get it. Let's, you could stay here until you find a job. And she did. So I think in that respect, we were both being amazing. We were honest and open with each other.
Yeah, I like that. I like the honesty and the transparency, because it ends up being something that's a good situation for both people. Talk about some of the common customer service mistakes that you see or fix when you're engaged after speaking, and as that customer service expert that you're engaged. What are some of the common things that you quickly are able to diagnose and offer suggestions to fix?
Sure. That's easy. Number one is that too many people think that customer service is some department, or it's just for the front line. And my belief is that it's a philosophy that should be embraced by everybody, from a CEO to the most recently hired behind the scenes person that will probably never, ever have contact with the customer. They still need to be customer focused. So it's a philosophy, because here's why. What happens on the inside of an organization is felt on the outside. So people need to serve each other internally as well, if not even better, than how we serve our outside customers. So that's a huge mistake I think that people make. Number two, I think when we talk, when the CEO says, I want us to have better customer service, that's not good enough. They really need to define what great customer service looks like. If they want to make it part of their culture, and we do a lot of work with companies who want to turn, their companies into a more of a customer-focused, service-oriented culture. They need to truly define it. People like the Ritz-Carlton with their 9-word credo, we're ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. That's as good as it gets right there. It's like so obvious. You come to work, you know who you are, and you know what you're supposed to do. Now, once we tell you that, we're going to train to it. So everybody gets trained. And I mean everybody. If somebody's in the warehouse who doesn't believe they contact or touch anybody in outside of their warehouse or outside of the business, they're wrong. What they do internally is really important. So we may not train them the same way we train somebody on the front line, but we're going to train them on what it takes to be customer focused.
That's Shep Hyken on the No BS Marketing Show, brought to you by Audible.com. You can get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/nobs. Try a book like one of the ones Shep has mentioned. Amaze every customer every time. 52 tools for delivering the most amazing customer service on the planet. And again, that's by our guest, Shep Hyken. Download it for free today. audibletrial.com/nobs. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Shep, two of the things you talked about that really ring true on the marketing side, as well as you were talking about how customer service can't be a department. I feel really strongly about the same thing about marketing. One of the mistakes that companies make that are average and not amazing is they see marketing as a marketing department. And when it's every employee has to be a de facto member of the marketing department. So we share the same thing about all employees on the team being in both customer service and marketing. And the second part is one of the biggest things that Mass Solutions, our company, has done to help our clients is cultural messaging. And internal messaging is really important, and many companies neglect that and don't communicate well, don't communicate that 9-word mission as well as Ritz-Carlton does. What are your thoughts on those things?
So, I mean, as we're talking there, you had a couple of ideas there. So let's talk about one. Tom Baldwin was the CEO of Morton's, the steakhouse. Now, Morton's is a different company today. I still love them. A matter of fact, I'm probably going to go there tomorrow night for dinner. They're right around the corner from where I live, and I just feel like I'm going to go get a steak. Okay. Anyway, he had a couple of concepts that were really important. Number one, he said the marketing department is every employee we have. So he said, if we do a great job in the kitchen and we send out a great meal to the server and the server delivers it well, people are going to walk away and go, that was a great experience. I want to come back. The next thing he said was, in his mind, customer service was mistakes handled well. Think about it. You know, I know one of the things, nobody is perfect. There's no doubt that nobody is perfect. No company is perfect. No restaurant is perfect. But what makes them great is when there's something that's imperfect, they do what they can to fix it. If it's truly a problem, their goal is to resolve it in such a way that doesn't just fix it, but gives somebody the confidence to want to come back and continue to do business with them again. In a number of my books, I've written about the concept of a moment of misery, a complaint or a problem, and how you resolve it. And that's a key piece, is you don't just fix it. You don't just bring it back to even. And I have this 5-step process. I'll share it with you in about 30 seconds. Number one, you acknowledge that there's a problem. When a customer comes to you with a complaint, you acknowledge it and you apologize. Steps 1 and 2, those can be reversed. It doesn't matter, but they both have to happen. Acknowledge, apologize. Something as simple as, oh, I can understand why you feel that way. I would feel that way if I were you too. That doesn't sound like things went well. Hey, and I'm just going to say on behalf of the company, I'm really sorry that this happened. That's number 1 and 2. Number 3 is you resolve it, or you discuss what it's going to take to resolve it. Number 4, you do it with an attitude of accountability and ownership. It's not your fault. It's your opportunity. And number 5, you do it with urgency, and you do it quickly. So it doesn't matter if it's a tiny complaint or a big complaint. Your goal is, if you handle things with this 5-step process, you'll not only fix the problem, but you'll restore the confidence. Now, you and I talked offline just before the show went live. You asked me about being president of NSA, the National Speakers Association, not the National Security. Yeah, one are the national speakers. We're the ones that talk. The other ones are the guys that listen, right? Okay. So you asked me about that whole name change debacle that happened. So literally seconds before I took the gavel as president of the National Speakers Association, they announced they were changing their name from National Speakers Association to another name. And there was this dead silence. And then they said, and now here's the first president. And they handed me the gavel, and I walked up there like to a minor smattering of applause. And usually the new president gets the standing ovation when he walks on stage or she walks on stage. And this was like, okay, something is wrong here. And I knew it within a matter of hours when the emails started coming in. The next day, a couple hundred more came in. By the end of the week, there were 780 emails that came in. Now, granted, that's a major percentage of our membership that was complaining about this name change. So we hired a crisis PR management firm out of Washington, D.C., on a holiday weekend. It was July 4th weekend, because we knew we had to come back next week with an answer. And they told me exactly, what I should put in the email, that we were going to get this thing to go through. And within a couple of weeks, everything would die down. We'd have our new name and everybody would be happy. And I'll never forget that Sunday night talking with Stacy Techner, the CEO, of the National Speakers Association, executive director. He ran the office and the staff and the team, who are wonderful, by the way. And I said, Stacy, I don't think we can do this. And he goes, man, I'm glad you said it because I didn't know, he serves at the privilege of the board. Me being president of the board and president of the association, it's like, okay, what are we going to do? We did a complete 180 the next morning. And I decided rather than send an email, we did a video. And that video was very cool. It was the fact that, you could see a name or a face behind the name. So it wasn't like it was just a black and white on the screen. But this way I said, hey, guys, I know everybody's upset. I did a couple of things. Number one, I said, I recognize that there's a problem. Number two, we are discussing, it's only been a few days since the conference and since this was announced. We need a few days to figure this out. We're getting an emergency board meeting together for later this week. I'm going to keep you updated as to what's going on. I asked, though, for space. I said, I received almost 800 emails. We need to stop with the emailing. My goal was to answer every one of those emails. And unless you cussed me out, I answered every one of them. And there were a few that did use some pretty profane language and came at me personally. And I felt that didn't deserve, that was just uncalled for. But there were a lot of people that were even angrier than the ones that were cussing at me. I answered every one of those angry people if they were reasonable. Doing what I do best, I said, okay, 5-step process. But guess what? I didn't even realize at the moment that I was doing that 5-step process. In that video, I acknowledged there was a problem. I apologized for it. I said, we're going to have the board meet. And I accepted some level of responsibility, like, hey, we're going to take care of this and we're going to act with urgency. We're going to have this board meeting by the end of the week. Everybody had gone home already, but we're going to somehow pull it together. And I asked for a little space. They gave it to me. On Friday, I came back. So this was on Monday. Friday, I came back with the second video. Okay, everybody, thanks for the space. The board is meeting on Sunday, and I promise to get back to you on Monday with exactly what we talked about and what things are being done. And on Monday, after our board met, I got back on and said, hey, everybody, we have to admit we have made a mistake, and we are picking up ourselves off the ground. We're dusting ourselves off, and we are now moving forward. And that's how it happened. And we did exactly that 5-step process. And I believe that when we were finished, not only fixed it, but people were excited about our association again. They were excited about how it was handled. They were excited that they were heard. And I believe we had more energy and enthusiasm about us than we'd had in a long time. And it was like a revitalization. By the way, I'm not suggesting we do that again to get us revitalized. But, you take what's handed to you. And what we did is we took lemons and we truly did turn it into a form of lemonade.
Hey, if you like the No BS Marketing Show, please post a review. Your positive reviews go a long way towards spreading the word about the No BS Marketing Show. Thanks in advance for taking the time. If you'd like to ask me a question or suggest a guest or anything else related to the show, email me at dave@masssolutions.biz. I've heard a lot of great comments, ideas, suggestions for guests, and it really helps to make the show better. I look forward to hearing from you. So thanks for joining us for the No BS Marketing Show. Visit masssolutions.biz for show notes, plus additional marketing and messaging resources. Are you signed up for the No BS Marketing Weekly Update? You'll receive timely, valuable ideas to improve your marketing and transform your message. It's light, intended to be read in 2 minutes or less, and it just might trigger bright ideas for you. To sign up, visit masssolutions.biz. Remember, ask yourself, what's the big idea? And build your story around the answer. It's all about bold solutions.